Okay, so in this video we're going to continue adding surfaces to our car here, and I kind of went ahead and did some of this by myself, but I wanted to point out that eventually this is going to be these parts are going to be turned into polygons, especially if we want to add some sort of detail that unfortunately NURBs will not allow us to create. So one thing to keep in mind, for instance, I made sure that this piece was one piece, because looking at my reference, this is a whole piece that goes up to here, is cut, and then this over here is going to be a whole piece as well. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to create this whole thing as one piece, or if I do, I might get a little bit of a irregular geometry, kind of like I'm having here, which this probably eventually I'm going to end up fixing when I go into polygon mode. But in this section I decided just to kind of make sure that all those pieces were just kind of divided, and then I'm just going to combine them all when they're in a polygon mode and add the geometry that it needs to do what it's supposed to do. But one thing to keep in mind is that one thing that I'm doing is to make sure that I am rebuilding these surfaces to make sure that for instance, they have the same amount of spans here as they do here, so it makes it it's going to make it easier for me to kind of combine them in the future. And this might look like a little bit too much, and again, it's completely up to what you think that the model needs. I could definitely go here into my rebuild surfaces and change the amount of CVs that this plane has. So for instance, if I wanted in the U direction to have less than 6, I could definitely kind of reshape it to do that, and I can do the same thing here. And again, the idea is just to make sure that there's there's enough resolution to do what it's supposed to do, but also that you have similar resolution between the different pieces that you're eventually going to combine into one piece, such as these two and the pieces that I'm about to create here. So I'm going to go ahead and do this last part. Another thing to make sure is that make sure you delete the history of these so they're not dependent on the curves, because depending on what you're doing, you might be either rebuilding or doing something completely different with one of these curves that you're using here, and if you leave the surface dependent on what the curves are doing, it's gonna mess it up. So just to make sure that there is no dependency between the curve and the surface once it's created, just go ahead and delete the history of it, so there's no dependency. I'm also making sure that I'm keeping my surfaces and my splines in separate layers, just to make it easier for me to deal with. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and start rebuilding these curves. Alright, and again, this one's going to be, gotta make sure that it's a NURB curve to start with. This one has 4 spans, this one has 6, so I'm going to have to kind of rebuild that a little bit. I can leave it at 6 as well. So I'm going to apply it here, convert this one to NURBs, rebuild it. Okay, and this one I think was one that I ended up rebuilding the patch at 4. So I'm going to do same thing with this one, and this one's going to be 4 as well, which looks like it already is. But again, sometimes it's a good idea just to rebuild that curve anyway, because it uniforms the distance between them. So the topology of your surface is going to be a lot nicer if you just go ahead and make them uniform. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and I want to make sure that it's in right order, kind of going around. Apply a boundary. Okay, so it's nice fluent geometry. And if I turn on my surfaces, it's going to be easier for me to kind of attach these two if I make sure that they have the same amount of resolution on the U direction. And again, I want to make sure that I delete the history of it. I have the shortcut right here on my tools. You can also go to edit, delete by type history. Okay, so I'm just going to click on this and make sure that I'm applying it on my layer so I can hide it with the rest of it, just so it's not in my way. Alright, and again, I want to keep let's just keep figure out how I want to make my surfaces for this. I'm just going to go ahead and finish it up here. Again, keeping in mind what I have going on top, so I know this one's going to need to be 6, this one's going to need to be 6. These two can pretty much be whatever, as long as whatever patch I make here has the same amount. So let's just go ahead and finish this up. And again, sometimes you might want to break things into pieces like here to kind of make it easier for you to combine. Sometimes you could try and maybe make the whole piece and just make sure you're rebuilding your curve to make sure that both sides have the same one. Again, there's no wrong way of going about this. I'm just probably breaking this up more than I need to right now, but I'd rather be in a position where I have too much detail to deal with than having not enough, and that I'd rather not to deal with when I'm in a polygon mode. So again, let's just go ahead and just finishing up here, and gotta make sure that they're NURBs. So this one being rebuilt to 4, so is this one. Okay, this one I probably want to rebuild to whatever this one is. This one has 6, so I'm gonna rebuild this one to 6. And gotta make sure that it's a NURB. So alright, and let's just go ahead and create that surface. Boundary. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing with this back part. And again, eventually I want to do the same thing with all these pieces. Whether I'm gonna make it into, I don't need to go into every single piece the way that I'm doing here. I'm just kind of choosing to do that for some of the detail here because it's gonna make it easier for me to deal with once I turn it into polygons. So again, I just want to go ahead and finish this up. This one has 6. I want to make sure that perhaps I cut this one into 2 pieces. This piece that I just made, again, I want to make sure that I delete the history, and I want to put it in the layer with all my other surfaces. I want to add it there. Alright, if I want to keep them out, make sure that they're frozen so I'm not selecting them. And this I want to detach around here, so it's just this piece, and then I want to come here again, make sure that it's a NURB, and just rebuild it. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and select this. Now this one I believe is 4 spans, so I'm gonna make sure that this one right here, it's the same. And again, it turns out that this whole piece right here is basically one thing. So I mean, if I wanted to, I could even create a whole patch based on these pieces right here. just to kind of make it easier for me, because again, perhaps I don't want to maybe cut all those pieces. So let me just hide my planes, and let's just see what happens if, rather than kind of doing it by separate pieces, I just go ahead and make a whole thing out of it, just to kind of make it easier for me to kind of finish that part. So again, this is I probably don't want to make this whole piece into one, so I definitely maybe want to cut this off a bit here. So I want to detach it there. These need to be one if I'm going to do what I'm about to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and select them all, and I'm just going to attach those curves. Alright, and now they're one. Now again, one of the things you have to be mindful of is that the history dependency that we get sometimes. So basically this is telling me that there's a dependency between the separate pieces that we had before and the new attached piece that I just created. So you see, by just moving that one, it's actually moving that part from the entire piece that we just combined. So I want to make sure that I delete the history on it. Alright, and then I can go in here, and if I move, and again it didn't work, let me just select the whole thing, delete the history. If I just move this part now, it's not going to move the entire piece, and I could probably just get rid of this now. Okay, so those separate pieces I don't need. I can just deal with the entire piece that I got over here. And then this needs to be a whole thing. And this needs to be a whole thing. Okay. I might actually, okay, I'm going to change this a bit actually, because I probably want this to be a whole line here, and this line right here, probably want this part to be part of it. And again, this is the problem with trying to make everything into one piece, that it might not work the way we want to. Because if I have this like that, what's going to end up happening is that I'm going to have some weird kind of geometry going from here to here, like in this flow. And again, that might be something that I might be willing to deal with or might not. And probably the smarter thing that I can do, and rather than making this whole thing into one, is actually maybe just sticking to this line instead. So again, probably can come here, alright, maybe detach again, okay, and I wanna do the same thing here. Okay. But then another problem that we're going to face is that, you know, I have these planes that have certain amount of resolution here that eventually needs to be combined with this. So this part right here, if I were to make it into a whole surface here, I'm going to have a really hard time with topologizing that later to make sure that it fits what's supposed to kind of be combined with this piece. So I could definitely maybe make one out of these 4 pieces, but I'm probably going to keep this one in the same workflow that I had before. So let's just, and again, part of, there is no exact way or anything set in stone how you're supposed to do this. You just kind of have to kind of go figure it out as you're working on it, and just again, you're a trouble solver, so you try to figure out the best solution to this problem. So again, let's just detach that, and I can come here, and I'm gonna need to rebuild this one. Okay, and I want this one to have somewhat nice, a lot of density, because we got a lot of detail going on here. And again, we might lose some of it by rebuilding it this way. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply it. and we did lose some of that sharpness that we're supposed to have right here. And again, perhaps that's something that I'm okay with. Perhaps maybe I can, instead of using the cubic, I might use a different type of degree to be rebuild it. So let me just stick to 2 or something like 1, and then apply it. So it's definitely making it so it's not really doing what it's supposed to do. So again, that's another one of those problems that we can face when we're trying to figure out into how many pieces to cut this. But again, I'm just gonna go ahead and make this into a whole, like just one patch. Just again, I need to turn it into a vest here, rebuild it. And you know what? I'm actually want to keep it into cubic. Just apply. Go into the side view. Maybe fix it up a little bit before I start attaching things to it. Okay, that has some nice curvature there. You know, and that sharpness that I had right there, that's something that I could always kind of bring back when I'm using, when I turn everything into a polygon and I start adding details. So it's not going to be lost. And again, probably 14 is something a little bit too much for that. Let's just stick to 10 and just apply that. I'm going to do the same with this one right here. Apply, and again, this needs to be converted and then applied here. Okay, and this one has 6 spans, so I probably want this bottom one to do the same. And again, I need to convert this and apply. So let's just go ahead and select these, and again, I want to make sure that I kind of break this up a bit. So let's see, detach, make sure I rebuild this again. Okay, let's select them, and boundary. Okay, and again, I'm getting something that you know, it's kind of following the shape of it, but at the same time, it's you know, it's a little bit somewhat irregular because of the way that the topology is kind of following. And I could always try and fix this by rebuilding the surface. Okay, and again, in this case, I wanted to have I guess 10 in the U direction and 6 in the V. Let's just apply that and see if it works. Oh, it's actually the other way around. 6 in the U and 10 in the V. Apply. Okay. And again, that might have solved something, that might have not done anything. But sometimes I still want to rebuild it so I get a little bit of nicer topology going on there. Okay, so that's the back of it right here, and I still kind of need to go in here and do the same thing here. So again, just many different approaches that you can take to try and build the surfaces. It just kind of, you know, it depends on your specific model and how you want to go about breaking things and then kind of putting back together. Again, I'm trying to rebuild these surfaces. I mean, this spline here. This needs to be a 4. And that's something that needs to be converted, so now it's good. This one has 6, this one has 6, and this has 6, so I gotta make sure that they they match, and now I can just go ahead and select them and then do our boundary. Okay, and I can definitely come here into my rebuild surfaces and see if I can clean this up a little bit. So again, I believe in my U I want to have 6, and in my V I want to have 4. So I'll apply that, and again I got it mixed up there again, so I want to make sure that I change this back. Okay, and it's a little cleaner than what we had before. Okay, so I mean, that kind of concludes what's going on in the top and in the back, and I can definitely want to go here and delete the history of these. Okay, and I want to make sure that you know, this is in layer with the surfaces. Okay. And you know, another thing that I'm going to need to consider also is that this might be a little bit too much topology for such a small area, but then again, you know, I might have to address that later and just leave it as is. Okay, so I'm going to stop at this point, and then I'm going to continue with the surfaces on the side and try to figure out how we're going to break some of the detail that we got going on here, because it's definitely probably going to be the most complex areas to figure it out.